Night two of a back-to-back, and this one left Denny Avdia and all Wizards fans alike troubled at the ending of this one. Two nights in a row where big leads were had in the first half, unfortunately unable to maintain them in the second half. Final score 125-123. Welcome to Postgame Live. Wes Hall with Glenn Consor. We will be joined by Chris Miller, Drew Gooden, and Megan McPeak momentarily, and of course hearing from Coach Unseld at the postgame podium. Glenn, I'm going to get straight to it. I am disappointed, as are you. A lot to break down, so I will yield the floor to you right now. What were your thoughts on this game?
I think you win this game with defense. I mean, even though there was, you look at both teams' personnel. Think about it for a second. Nobody was playing. You know, Kuz went out with the ankle injury. Brad didn't play. Porzingis got into foul trouble. The Nets didn't have Simmons and Kyrie and all the drama that the Nets have gone through. You win this game with defense. I don't think the Wizards made adjustments, especially in the third quarter against Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas did not start this game. KYP, know your personnel. He's a scorer. You need help. You got to throw different looks, different double teams at Cam Thomas. 44 points. If you remember, Wes, in the first half, I said that the Wizards have an advantage in bench points.
Yes.
60-40 was the bench points advantage the Nets had at the end of this game over the Wizards. They took their foot off the pedal defensively. They didn't get back in the transition game. Fast break points, 27 fast break points. The Nets had. The Wizards only had 6. The Wizards needed to run, and they needed to get back. We talked about it in the beginning of the game, right? My keys to the game, 27 fast break points. They didn't get back on defense. They couldn't get the stops they needed. They couldn't get deflections. The pedal was off the metal defensively. They couldn't get anything off their defense in the second half.
Question, was it a lack of, we know Brad didn't play today, and then Kuz left early with the ankle. Is it a lack of depth on the roster at this point for this particular game? Or was it the lack of the firepower that a guy like Kuzma could have had available to you in the second half?
I don't think it's either.
Fair enough.
I don't think it's either. You got to play with what you have. And the Wizards have guys off the bench that can do things. You know, I would have liked to see Jordan Goodwin in a little bit more at the end of the game. You know, because one of the things he can do very well is he could be disruptive. How many plays that the Wizards made defensively down the stretch where they were disruptive and they didn't get any steals, they didn't get any deflections. I thought that really hurt the Wizards down the stretch. And again, offensively, the ball didn't move. Right. Especially in the second half, the ball didn't move. You need to move the ball side to side. I don't think they used Porzingis enough in the second half, and he had big numbers.
Yeah, including the foul. You know, there's so many different.
There's so many things.
So many things that I want to talk about. I want to bring in Chris and Drew and get their thoughts on this as well. Gentlemen, a bit of deja vu, it feels like, unfortunately so. We've talked about a lot of different things, Glenn and I, Chris and Drew. I want your assessment on what went wrong tonight, and more importantly, how do we fix this? Because on back-to-back nights seeing this, there's a consistency, and I want to address that. What was it, is that, Drew?
The Wizards need a defensive stopper, plain and simple. Who's the guy that you can say, go turn this water off? Last night, you didn't have anybody step up to turn off Simon's water. Tonight, you had nobody in the building to stop Cam Thomas. Who is that guy, and who wants to step up to the challenge?
Chris?
Guys, I just don't think there's any excuses for back-to-back nights like this. As I said at halftime, it was deja vu. Wizards leading by 18. They led by 18 tonight. And I don't want to hear about who's not available. They don't have their 2 best players available. One wants to get out of town. And this kid, Cam Thomas, I mean, Glenn, I think you've seen this kid when he played at Oak Hill. He played the 1 year at LSU where he led the league in scoring. You talk about KYP. This kid came out of the womb scoring. This kid averaged 7.4 points per game, but every time that he gets his name called for the Brooklyn Nets, remember that game in Indiana when they only had 8 available, he scored 40. Tonight he had 40. Again, this is the first time that an NBA player coming off the bench has scored 40.
You know, I think what Chris
he
is saying.
He scored 44.
Chris, what you're saying is absolutely right. KYP, he's a scorer. And Drew, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time. The Wizards need, I don't care how tall he is, I don't care how what he looks like, they need a defensive stopper. I agree with Drew. They need physicality on the wing. You got to be able to stop an Anthony Simons, a Damian Lillard. You got to show some. Look, those guys are elite offensive players. Cam Thomas, even though he's an elite scorer, he's not in that elite category as a Damian Lillard yet. So what do you need? You need gang defense, or you need someone to step up and become physical on the perimeter, deny dribble penetration, muck it up a little bit, get deflections, take charges. You know, it's got to be, you got to win games that way. And the last 2 nights, we haven't seen it.
Guys, can we take
Last night they gave
Go
up,
ahead, Chris.
guys, real quick. Last night they gave up 73 points in the second half to the Portland Trailblazers. Tonight, they gave up 70.
Wow. Back-to-back
I mean,
nights.
look, that's just the reality. It's real, and
There's no excuses.
we can sit here and try to tap dance around it all we want. The reality is, these last 2 nights, the Wizards have blown leads in the first half and allowed multiple guys to put up big numbers. By the way, we haven't talked about Edmund Sumner for Kyrie Irving, had 29 tonight.
No, you're absolutely right, Chris. We're going to get to that in a second. As a matter of fact, I want to, for Wizards fans, you know, you guys were calling this moment in the game. Lynn and I were watching it. I want to go back and take a look at that goaltending call later on in the game, guys, and help me understand this, Drew. Because in my natural eye, I thought the call was a foul on the floor, which would have prevented the continuation. Here go the goaltending call, and at least would have given Brooklyn the ball. But we were all incorrect. They could call the foul on the floor. They gave continuation, and they called the goaltending and gave him the shot. Did I get that right, Drew?
This is the perfect angle to make that call right there. And what was awkward about this goaltend is where Daniel Gafford placed his hand on the ball. It was at the bottom of the ball, so it kind of manipulated it to make it look like it was still on the way up, but he actually palmed it on the way down. And it was for a split second. You can see the seams of the ball kind of change in a direction to make it ultimately a goaltend. But where I thought that foul was on the floor, they should have had the ball side out of bounds, but apparently that was not the case on the review.
You know, I agree with you, Drew, but the bottom line is, on that play, you don't try to go for it if you're a big man. You can't try to go for it. It doesn't matter if you block it or if you get it at the right time. Let it go. That, to me, that ball looked like it was going short. Gafford should have had the wherewithal to back off on that play, but I also thought it was, you know, on the floor, and in his defense, I think he was trying. It's obviously it's in the moment, but man, you got to back off that thing.
Chris?
I mean, Cam Thomas does not even jump. He doesn't even leave his feet, so
Right.
it is on the floor. The foul is on the floor.
Yeah.
But hey, you can't cry over spilled milk. You
Nope.
should not have been in this situation to
Exactly.
begin with.
Yep.
Exactly.
Chris, that's exactly what we were saying on this side. Is you don't want to be in that position to begin with to have referees make that call. But I'm just curious about the effect that these 2 games now have heading into Monday when we're going to be back home against the Cleveland Cavs. How do you try to wash off these 2 games in particular to try to come back home and get a win, Chris?
Hey, listen. Oh, go ahead. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Either one.
Go ahead.
Either
Go
one
ahead.
is fine. Either one. I know both of you. I like both of you. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, last night we came on the post-game show and said just flush it, act like, move on to the next game. What are we going to say now? This is the second straight night where they've blown leads, 20-point leads. And I'm going to tell you what, guys, I didn't like their body language, to be real honest with you there, in the waning moments of this game when Brooklyn Nets were actually walking them down. I didn't like what I was seeing on the floor. I didn't like what I was seeing in the huddle. These guys need to figure it out because the Cleveland Cavaliers are coming up. Mm-hmm. They're really good. They got all-stars over there, and they don't care what's going on right now. The Wizards need to figure it out. And it's tough that Porzingis fouled out. I hope Kyle Kuzma is fine with the sprained ankle. Will Beal come back? But I don't want to hear anything about their 3 top players not being available.
Fair.
Because their 3 top players weren't available tonight, and these kids came off the bench and put on the show for Jacques Vaughn.
Guys, I'm curious because in these past 2 nights, it's been the third quarter that was the difference maker. We talked about being up so much at the half, but when you look at the third and fourth quarter for the Wizards, 26 points, 24 points, while Brooklyn put up 37 and 33. Glenn or Drew or Chris, whoever wants to go first on this, how do we prevent those third quarter lulls when you have such a big lead like that?
Well, it almost doesn't matter who's on the floor, and I agree with what Chris is saying, because the bottom line is whoever is on the floor, okay, someone's got to step up and be a leader, not only offensively, but specifically on the defensive end. That means you can't give up easy baskets. How many easy baskets did the Nets get this game? Too many. Too many easy buckets coming down, pulling up, Patty Mills, Sumner, wide open jump shots. You know what that means? Who's ever playing It doesn't matter. Has to step up and get in a teammate's face and go, we got to minimize space on shooters. We have to be aggressive, more aggressive. And someone's got to take that role.
Christian Drew?
I mean, listen, you're putting yourself in these situations where you're going up 20 points in the first half. You cannot let this become a thing. And what scares me is this is less than 24 hours, and you put yourself in the same position. It does not matter who the Wizards have. We've seen it. They always give themselves a chance to win a ball game any given night. And what Chris said, I mean, we didn't even mention Ben Simmons tonight not being available. There was no excuses for them. They didn't put their heads down 25 points tonight, 23 points, whatever it is. They kept fighting, clawing. And I hope that you can learn losing ball games like this, that at the Wizards, when you're ever in a situation where you're down 23 points, or if you're down 20 points in the first half, the game isn't over.
Guys, I want to go back to the last time we were actually here in Brooklyn. I think it was November the 30th. Glenn, I don't know if you remember what this happened. There was a sequence early in the third quarter. Literally, it might have been the first possession. Jacques Vaughn was not happy with the defensive set, and he called a timeout, one of them Greg Popovich moves where he was like, I didn't like what I saw, and he addressed it. In the pregame today, he didn't make one excuse about Kyrie Irving asking for a trade, Kevin Durant being out with a knee injury, Ben Simmons not being available. You know what he said? And it sticks with me. He says, I got 10 guys that are available tonight, and my mission to them is no excuses, go do your job. What happened in this game?
Right, same thing.
2 of those 10 guys actually left the game with Seth Curry and also Markieff Morris. So they were down to 8. So he's looking at the end of his bench, and he found a guy in Cam Thomas. And, again, I can't say this enough. This kid can score the basketball, and he was given no resistance to get wherever he wanted on the floor. So I'm going to give Jacques Vaughn some credit. I know it's the opposition, and I know we normally don't talk about the other teams. But there was something that he said in the pregame show that manifested itself out here on the floor tonight.
You know, to piggyback what Chris is saying, I'm gonna pose this to you 3 guys here. Who was the more proactive team, offensively and defensively, in the second half of this game?
I think that was telling. Cam Thomas and Sumner. Sumner started off this game 0 for 3 in the first half, and the guys were basically daring him to shoot the ball, and then the second half was like a whole new basketball player came out torching them, and then Cam Thomas, and there was nobody to turn the water off. I kept saying, are the Wizards going to be able and capable of defensively stopping them? But it never happened.
You got to learn from this. You have to learn from this game, brush yourself off, and understand that you got to stay. The last 24 minutes of a game, you got to be more aggressive than even in the first half.
We've talked about confidence. One thing is you want to have confidence on your side, but you do not want to give the opposition confidence, and that's unfortunately what's happened these past 2 nights. Christian Drew, we appreciate you as always. We'll see you back on Monday here in D.C. to take on the Cleveland Cavs. Wizards fans, you and I get to hang out with Glenn for a second more because, Glenn, before we go to head coach Wes Hall Jr., one of the concerns that we talked about was Kyle going out and the impact that would have on the team. You still got 38 out of KP. You still got 18 out of Monte Morris. Corey Kispert gives you 15.
Denny scored too.
Denny as well. So the simple question is this. No excuses.
No.
How do guys rally around themselves in these moments and make sure that they understand the assignment and then complete it?
You have to do some soul searching in this case. You really do. You know, each player's got to take a look at themselves and say, well, what has happened over the last 2 nights? Look, you know, first of all, it's not a doom and gloom situation.
All right.
The Wizards won 6 straight before they lost to the Trailblazers, so they're doing a lot of positive things. But you want to keep that momentum, and you got to stay positive. But you also have to stay aggressive, do soul searching, understand why these things are happening. They really, I thought, have let up a little bit defensively in the second half, didn't you?
Yeah.
They let up. I mean, you can't let up. And you have to continue to stay proactive. No fast break points in the second half. Attack. Because clearly, that's what Brooklyn was doing, attacking. Patty Mills coming down, quick shots. Sumner, quick shots. Cam Thomas was he turned into Damian Lillard that game.
Well, you can't turn the clock into your teammate that early in the game.
But
you have to stay
but,
aggressive, and that's I think that's the point you're making, is you can't look at the clock like we'll keep our 20-point lead and slow roll them to the end.
No.
You can't play the clock that way. You have to
gotta
stay
turn
aggressive, take 20, turn it into 30, et cetera, et cetera. Let's you and I pause for a moment. Wizards fans, head coach Wes Hall Jr. at the post-game podium. We'll be back here in a second.